Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Today, all of our guests, including Farhan Lalji, standing by, brought to you by the Alberni Power and Marine RPM Group. Located in Port Alberni, Alberni Power and Marine, one of Vancouver Island's most trusted boat dealerships, the largest Mercury Marine dealership in Canada. Their service team just won for the fourth straight year a CSI score above the national average. Make your appointment for the 2023 boating season. We've changed the script here. We've finally updated it at albernipowermarine.com. We thank you so much for having them. We thank them so much for hopping aboard. Get it? Boats aboard. Andrew in the Grove. I think I've got that right. Delaney's OK Tire in Langley inbox. By the way, this hasn't come out a lot, but Delaney's OK Tire, also the sponsor of our Old Man Kane.
Yeah, it's always sitting right there between us.
Among other things. Moving Hughes around just robs from Paul to feed Peter another Band-Aid fix.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like the fact that Quinn Hughes is open to helping the team out in any way. But, hey, look, could they use another defenseman? We talked about Ethan Bear earlier this week, and we've talked about him for a long time, no doubt about it. But this is what they have. This is what they're going with. Okay, Farhan Lalji joins us now from TSN. Farhan, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Good. Just finished up with the Canucks here for their pre-training camp media availability, and Bruce Boudreau regaled us with some levity once his media availability was over. Actually, it was pretty funny during it as well. So, training camp gets kicked off, and looking forward to it.
Anything stick out other than Bruce being funny?
Well, I mean, the obvious questions to Bo Horvat about potential distractions, right? And he's determined not to allow it to become a distraction. Says his focus is completely on the team right now and trying to lead them, and does believe that the situation will come to fruition, right? I mean, whether that means here, I'm assuming that's what he's hoping, as opposed to, long-term having to make a more difficult decision. But, and I think there's a real determination, and I guess every team has this at this point about getting into the playoffs, but the language was stronger than I've heard before, repeatedly. Both Boudreau said, if we don't make it, it's a disaster. JT Miller said, if we don't make it, it's a failure. Like some pretty strong language. They've done kind of everything they feel they need to do. We've talked about meaningful games in April for so long, and I think they're past that, and they kind of know the way the team is set up, and I think there's a feeling that certain parts of their roster are good enough to make up for the potential deficiencies like we've talked about on the blue line, and that should at least allow them to get in.
Farhan, at the Milford the other day, you led the way talking to Quinn Hughes, making the move from the left side to the right side. Do you believe that could be a smooth transition?
Yeah, I don't know how smooth it'll be, but, he's open to it, and he's just such a good skater, and he's got so much skill that I don't think it has to be rough, right? I mean, he might not be as good on one side as he is the other, and, and I don't know how he feels he needs to be used in terms of, is it better for him to make this a consistent move or back and forth and potentially be a one-time thing, which is, I think, how he's looking at it, right? I think when the story got put out a few weeks ago that he'd gone to the organization, I think many people thought, okay, well, this is a full-time thing, and he could be a full-time partner with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Whereas when you listen to both Boudreau and Hughes at the golf tournament, I think they thought of it as an option, as a part-time thing, as just something you could do at certain stages in the game. And I think that probably makes some more sense. What that does to their stability in terms of how they deploy their pairs might be interesting, because I think there's a lot of moving and connected parts, right? That if Tucker Poolman works himself out and can be healthy and can play, consistently in the top four role, which many people don't believe he can, even if he's healthy, what does that do to the right side and the necessity to move Quinn Hughes over? How does Jack Rathbone fit into all of that? Travis Dermott's a player that's played on both sides before, so I think all of that plays into it a little bit. But from Hughes' standpoint, I get the sense that his preference is that it not be a full-time thing.
For me, the goaltending is going to be front and center, and I'll tell you why. Demko last year obviously played too many games, and he was hurt down the stretch. I think a perfect number for Thatcher would be 55 to 58. But then, okay, who's the backup? Spencer Martin, only 6 games in the NHL. Farhan. Colin Delia, they signed in Abbotsford. He's got 32 games in the NHL. So it's going to be interesting. The dynamic in goal. Demko, can you get them the rest he needs? And is the backup going to be ready to give him 20 to 25 games?
Yeah, I think Spencer Martin did some great things in the small sample size that he had, and also followed that up with some really good performances in Abbotsford when eventually he got moved there. So I do believe he's kind of at the top of that pecking order, and I know the contract that Yella signed, gives him every opportunity. But I think that, I certainly believe at this point that Spencer Martin's going to have the leading edge as far as the number 2 goaltending spot is concerned. And you're right. I mean, if they can get to that 55 to 58 sweet spot and Martin can come in and play potentially 25 games, it seems like a big ask, but that's what you're going to need to do if you want to get the best out of Thatcher Demko.
And you cannot do that to Demko again. Last year he played hurt. Remember the games in New York back-to-back? You can't do that again. All right, let's go to the CFL. A suspension yesterday. Linebacker Cameron Judge, 1 game at the Stampeders. He got in that altercation with Lions receiver Lucky Whitehead. Farhan, what happened there? Was the punch after the game or during the game?
Well, it was definitely after the game. It was in that period where the players kind of mill about and shake hands and things like that. I don't think Judge tried to defend himself, right? I mean, regardless of the comments that Lucky Whitehead may have made both in that game and in the previous game in Calgary where I believe all of this got started, and even Whitehead alluded to that there was more going on in that game than there was in this game. Regardless of those comments, you can't go punch a guy after a game, right? And,
no.
I know there was a lot made between the two organizations about whether or not it was a sucker punch or whether it wasn't a sucker punch. And, Whitehead said the judge came up to him with his helmet on. So, whether he was looking at it or looking away, if the other player's got his helmet on, you probably don't expect to get punched at that point, right? Because, you can't really punch back when a guy's wearing a helmet. But regardless of all of that, I don't think the league cares about any of that, right? Those are things you could potentially use, in a court of law to make a case if you decide to pursue this thing civilly. As far as the league is concerned, a punch is just offside, especially at the end of the game. So I think they got it right, and I think Judge handled it right as well in terms of, look, we're not appealing this. I can't defend it. I just want to take my punishment and move on.
And Lions Calgary rematch Saturday at BC Place. We'll see if things carry over even without Cam Judge there. Hey, Farhan, before we let you go, and we had you on last week, and I didn't ask you about this, but you're an SFU alum. What do you think of the name change from Clan, which had to be done, to Red Leafs?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the name at all.
Yeah.
And you're right, it had to be done. But boy, given the time they took, and research they did, maybe it'll grow on me. Maybe I just don't like anything Leafs, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think there could have been something a little more dynamic, a little more just cutting edge. But I just think they decided to go with the least controversial nickname possible, and something you just couldn't tie to anything in the climate that we're currently in, where everything is offensive. Yeah. But I'm disappointed. I was left wanting for sure. I shouldn't say hate it, but disappointed for sure.
Yeah, they could have come up with something a little less Toronto. How about that? Hey, Fran, one more before we let you go. I know I said that was going to be the last question, but Vernon Adams.
I love talking to you, Donnie.
I know.
Good, right?
We go way back. Vernon Adams, what did he show you in Calgary?
Yeah, you know what? I think he showed confidence. I think he showed comfort. I think he showed that the Lions made the right decision by waiting a week longer to make sure they put him in that space as opposed to maybe rolling him out there a bit early. But the other thing they also showed me is that Jordan McSimick is a really good offensive coordinator, because in terms of how he called that game, I think he put Vernon Adams in a really, really good position to succeed. So, and all the Lions needed, and I thought Vernon Adams was very good. There were 2 sacks he took in the first half, which were really not good, and they were like panic-looking sacks. He needs to eliminate that from his game. If he could do that, the Lions will be onto something there. But the Lions needed competent quarterback play in the previous 2 games that they lost. They didn't need elite quarterback play.
Right.
They didn't need Nathan Rourke quarterback play, which they've needed in previous games. And if Vernon Adams can just give them that 6 out of 10 quarterback play, I think the rest of this roster is just fine, where they can have a home playoff game and build towards the playoffs.
And we saw Nathan Rourke throwing a football. He's got the walking boot on, so I know you're not a doctor, but who knows about his health. Thanks for this, Farhan.
Well, he's crazy optimistic. I think he honestly believes he can come back.
Yep, he does.
the former Red Leaf, Farhan Lalji, joining us as he will next
that
week.
doesn't sound good.
Yeah, well, you've got the label. All right, thanks, Farhan. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.